If you're a good guy who sometimes feels like he is a bad person, especially in situations of conflict or when people you care about get upset, this video is for you. My name is Ege. I'm the founder of Data-Driven Actualization, and I've helped hundreds of analytical men master their belief system so they can deepen their relationships and live the life they want in the past 5 years. And what I'm about to share with you in this video is going to come from a conversation I had with one of my one-on-one clients that was very interesting, because this was someone that I had been working with for around 4 years, someone who was older in life, who really cared about not only himself, but making the people around him better. And when I understood the pattern that was going on for him, it made me realize how much good men can gaslight themselves into feeling like they're the bad person because of one core belief they have. So in this video, I'm going to share what that core belief is, what the cost of holding that core belief results in for people with a similar pattern, and how you can actually re-engineer it. Because if you're a good guy, it doesn't serve you or the people that you care about when you feel like you're a bad person. So let's get into today's presentation. First, the idea here, right, is a lot of good men have this association when people they care about are struggling, suffering, maybe upset around something, that if you're in pain, I must have caused it. This is the core assumption. This is the core thing to be aware of, right? So men like this cannot really process the idea that someone they care about might be in pain, but actually they're not the source of this pain. And this especially comes up in men who are what I call recovering nice guys, men who have maybe been a nice guy in the past and now have figured out how to date, gotten a girlfriend, and are a lot more healthy, but still have some of the tendencies that the nice guys would have back in the day. So this is the core idea we want to start with. Caring about someone doesn't necessarily mean you have to take the blame if they're not feeling their best. The core pattern here that men like this struggle with is they just assume if someone I love is suffering, I'm the cause of their suffering and I'm responsible for ending their suffering. And what's tricky about this can sound like a very responsible way to approach life. If you talk to your friends about this, if you talk to your family, they might even congratulate you and say, wow, you truly care about your partner. But what happened with my client, I'll tell the story briefly because obviously it's private, right? But there was a situation of conflict between him and his girlfriend. And my client in his early 50s, his girlfriend's a bit younger. So because he was the one who'd spent years doing self-development, who was basically retired, right, who had all this wisdom and maturity, and who was someone other people look up to as a mentor, he felt like my girlfriend shouldn't be suffering from this argument, from the conflict that we had, right? And as a result, he thought, well, I should have done better. I should have been better. And for men who are a little bit further along in life, who are not just starting out their development journey, who know how to get in shape, who know how to build relationships, who know how to communicate socially, you are kind of that archetype who's maybe older, who's seen as someone who's put together, who's done therapy, who's done coaching. So sometimes you might put more weight into you knowing the right thing to do and you doing the right thing. And you can carry the weight of responsibility of how you would respond in a situation, not just for yourself, but also for your partner, for a friend, for your whole family, right? Maybe there's a conflict in your family and you think, oh, if I just communicated all these tools I know about to them, they could have fixed this problem. But the cost of this is, even though it feels mature and responsible, you end up feeling like other people's comments or feedback are a personal attack on you. So with my client, this came out as him saying, I feel like I'm the perpetrator of my partner's suffering. This was the sentence that we started our one-on-one call with. And the thing is, I've been working with him for the past like 3-4 years, and I know this person really well. And I know he would never intend to not even hurt his partner, to even hurt a fly, right? This is someone who deep in his heart cared deeply about people outside of himself, strangers, people in his family, his friends, and obviously his romantic partner. So I was a little bit surprised when he came into the call with that, because I could see this person wouldn't want to do that, right? And the way this whole thing started is basically my client had a long marriage that he had come out of a few years ago, and he told his girlfriend, like, look, I don't see myself marrying again. And this made his girlfriend feel like, well, I don't think I'm in your future because you don't want to get married. Now, the thing is, my client had been honest about this up front. So he had said to this woman, when they were dating, on the first, even on the second date, hey, I enjoy spending time with you. However, I don't think I'm going to get married again. Here's my backstory on why. So if you're going to date me, you should be aware of this. So this wasn't information that he just shared out of the blue. This was information that she knew for a long time. He had been honest from the start. He didn't want marriage, and he wanted to take the relationship just one step at a time. But this was after a year, or I think 2 years of dating, where they were again having a conversation about the future. And my client wanted to stay in the city they were in. His girlfriend wanted to go somewhere else, live somewhere else, maybe start studying there. And eventually the conversation escalated where his girlfriend said, well, I don't really feel like I'm in your future, right? And the moment he heard that, the moment he saw her pain, not because he had led her on, not because he had lied, not because he had hid things, he had manipulated her, nothing like that. He was completely upfront. Immediately that triggered a reaction in him that said, I caused this. I should have known better, and I have to fix it. And the guilt that he felt eventually turned into a belief about himself that wasn't even true. And that belief was the same sentence that he started off the call with. I'm the perpetrator of my partner's suffering. So I'm giving you this example because you may be doing the same thing in different areas of your life, right? Maybe you have been very honest about your own dating experience with someone, and what you wanted didn't really align, and now this person feels really sad, and you want to be accommodating and you want to remove them from their pain. But as an attempt to do that, you actually neglect what's best for you. It could be a situation at work. Maybe you were very clear that you weren't going to be able to take on this extra project, but now the other team is running behind on deadlines, and you want to be a nice person. You want to be kind. So you feel this impulse to take on the project that you probably shouldn't take on if you're prioritizing yourself, because of this experience of guilt. A lot of good men, the moment they experience negative feelings around them, again, as a probably as a childhood pattern, I had this too myself, they treat it as a problem, and they take responsibility to create the solution, not for themselves, but for the people around them, which again can be a very noble thing to do, to care about how other people around you are feeling, but it becomes unhealthy when it takes you away from the life that you want to live. So the idea here, and what we did on our call to address this and to resolve this, was realizing that the contract that he believed in, that said, I'm the perpetrator of other people's suffering, had nothing to do with his girlfriend. It actually went back to his parents' painful divorce and the past relationships he were in, where he was really unclear about what he wanted. And he did become avoidant, right? So in this relationship, he was a healthy man. He'd done the work, he'd done therapy, he'd done work with me. He was one of the best clients I had, one of the people who took this path the most seriously and sincerely, right? So who he was in real data, looking at him now, was different. But his self-image didn't really update. Because of his parents' divorce, because of being avoidant in his past relationship, he still held a tiny bit of his self-image as someone who caused other people pain. So this meant when there was a situation of conflict, especially in his romantic relationship, it wasn't just a conversation, it almost felt like he was on trial. And he was the bad guy being placed onto the stand and just being judged. So what he realized throughout our call and what he said himself was, I told myself a story that simply isn't true anymore. And I've been running my relationship from it. And how this affected his relationship wasn't a big cost just for him, but it was also a big cost for the dynamic he created with his partner, right? He felt chronic guilt, and he also felt like now his partner was a victim who needed to be rescued instead of being able to relate to his partner, while his partner was saying, don't treat me as a victim. I might be feeling sad right now, but I also chose this relationship. Just let me process my emotions. So his it created this unhealthy dynamic where now he was causing the pain, his partner was the victim, and he was also the person who was supposed to save her from the pain. And that mental model created an unhealthy dynamic in the relationship. And instead, when they were trying to have conversations around this, he would spend more energy trying to prove like, hey, I'm not a bad person. He'd be on the defensive. I'm not a bad person. I want the best for you. All of this stuff, instead of actually listening to her. So he thought he was being empathetic, but actually a lot of his communication was centered around trying to defend himself as a result of this old belief pattern that was taking over him in that moment. So we spoke about, what the core belief is, what the cost is, how this showed up in my client, and how it might maybe show up in your own life. Now, let's talk about how to actually address this. What do we change in our communication, our belief, if that's something that shows up for you? First, when someone brings up their feeling, their own experience, we approach it with curiosity rather than trying to get on the defensive. So stop assuming, as a person who wants to be a good guy, that you cause other people suffering if they're experiencing a negative emotion. At the end of the day, everyone's responsible for their own emotions, right? And get curious about what she's actually feeling and needing, or he is, if this is a friendship, or if this is a family situation, right? Recognize how often you're secretly defending yourself instead of listening to the other person. And there's two reframes that are going to be extremely important here, right? The first reframe is, I don't want the people I love to suffer, but if they do, their feelings are not my responsibility. Again, there are exceptions to this, but as a general rule, this can help a lot. The second reframe is approaching the situation with curiosity. Instead of putting the other person into the seat of the victim and you being the perpetrator and trying to be the rescuer at the same time, get very clear about how they're feeling. How are you feeling? What do you need from me? How can I support you? What's coming up for you around this? When me and my client worked on this just after one call, what happened with him actually was that he was able to have a lot more grounded of a conversation with his girlfriend, and eventually this conversation strengthened their relationship because his girlfriend said, look, when I'm emotional like this, I don't want you to take on that responsibility. I just want you to give me a hug, to support me, to share with me that you love me, right? I want that emotional reassurance because at the end of the day, when I started dating you, I knew what I was getting into. And I picked you because I think you're a special person for me, and I'm actually happy with what's happening right now, right? So this allowed them to resolve the conflict much, much simpler. Now, if you're a guy who's dealing with something similar, right? And let's say you're someone who's financially stable, who's respected at his work, who's genuinely trying his best, and you still feel like a villain in some situations. And again, this is not for guys who are actually doing unethical things, who are actually putting themselves into position objectively where they could be perceived as that bad person. This is for guys that, your friends look at you and say, dude, you're such a good guy. But you internally feel like in situations of conflict, oh my God, I'm such a horrible person. So this is for the guy who's trying his best, who's financially stable, who's respected at work, who keeps getting feedback that he's a good person, but sometimes still feels like a villain in day-to-day life. If that's you, here's a 7-day experiment that I would recommend for you to do. When you're in situations where you feel guilty, right? Journal two things. The first thing is the feeling that you saw in this person. What was the feeling that you observed in them? The second is the story that you told about your own role. For 7 days, log this whenever someone close to you is upset, and don't try to change your behavior. Just look at the pattern itself and understand, or rather observe, how often your story is, I have caused this, with no hard evidence. And that's what's going to give you proof that an old story is actually still running your experience. If you resonate with this and you want to do something about this pattern, or you want to identify another pattern that could be running your life, I want you to go to the link datadrivenactualization.com, check out our website, and if you have anything that you want to talk to me about, you can scroll below and go to the link to book a call where you can book a donation-based consultation on whatever you want to talk about, right? I hope this served you, and I'll see you in the next video.